veterinary medicine is really under there.
No, it's on the Secretary of State now. Good morning, everyone. We've got we got a busy morning for our Ag and Consumer Affairs Committee. Appreciate everyone being here. All my office staff, lead counsel, Courtney George, everybody. So I'm going to ask Representative Danny Mathis if he would open us up with a word of prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's pray. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for this beautiful day. Just thank you for letting us be here. I just ask you to bless everyone here, everyone's family, keep them safe. Thank you for the many blessings you've given all of us. We just ask today that we would be mindful of you, that we would keep your will in mind when we make decisions in agriculture and consumer affairs. Be with us, guide us, and direct us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Well, again, we've got a busy morning. We've got, you see agenda, but I think we've got a couple of additions. We're getting closer and closer to crossover day, so we're trying to fit in some bills, some hearings. I know things are moving quickly. Committee, you might be on the lookout for another committee meeting early next week to try to look at some more legislation, some subs that are coming our way, some changes. So thank you for your patience and your attendance. Got a few visitors I want to recognize. The former chairman of this committee, President Tom McCall, now of Farm Bureau, and he's got some guests and board members with him. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being here. So thank you for all you do for agriculture and Farm Bureau throughout our state. Appreciate it. I've asked Poultry Federation, Mike Giles. I get a lot of questions, and I know you have, of this committee about egg prices, poultry prices, and you've got a sheet in your packet that I thought that Mike gave me last week that I thought was very good information. And so I asked Mike to come this morning and give us a little explanation of why egg prices are so high.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the opportunity. Members of the committee, my name is Mike Giles. I'm president of the Georgia Poultry Federation. We're a trade association which represents poultry growers, poultry companies, and allied industry in Georgia. And I'm sure you and your constituents have a lot of questions about eggs. I know that I get them. My family and friends have texted me many times and sending me memes or pictures of egg prices. And I think my favorite one is a young man proposing to his future wife. And instead of presenting a ring, he presents a carton of eggs, and the caption is, "He went to Kroger." So it certainly has captured a lot of attention. I'm going to talk about two topics quickly. And both are related to each other. The first is avian influenza outbreak that we're experiencing here, and then egg prices. So first, just talk about the avian influenza outbreak that's facing our nation. We've had over the last, since 2022 to 2023, 756 flocks in the United States have been detected with avian influenza. 316 of those are commercial flocks, and then 449 of those were backyard flocks. It has impacted 47 states, and 58 million chickens have been impacted by this disease. If we look back at the last outbreak we had was 2015, and at that time it was described as the largest foreign animal disease outbreak in our nation's history. and this one is really comparable, and in some ways worse. Foreign animal disease is, like it sounds, it's a disease that comes in from another country, not indigenous to our country. We always monitor for it, and our policy in the United States is to eradicate it if we detect it, and to be transparent to the world if we find it. This outbreak is a little different in that normally we see a lull period in the summertime, and like some other viruses, but this one continued through the summer of 2022 and is continuing. The other thing that's very different is avian influenza historically has been almost contained to wild bird populations, and those are wild waterfowl, ducks and geese that can travel all over the world, and carry the disease, but not get sick from it. This version is different in that it has gone into other species of wild birds and some that don't migrate. In Georgia, an example of that is vultures, and in fact, vultures have been detected with avian influenza throughout Georgia. And Mr. Chairman, the last detection was Peach County in February of 23. So we know the virus is out there. We're always looking for it. Every batch of chickens that goes to processing is tested for avian influenza before it goes to processing. So we had no commercial detections in Georgia, and our biosecurity is high, and we want to make sure it stays that way. Quickly now, just talk about egg prices. Out of that 58 million hens that I mentioned, 44 million of those were laying hens or pullets that become laying hens. So you can see that's 44 million hens, egg-laying hens that we lost out of a national flock of about 330 million. So it's a very significant, and with commodity prices, as you all know, it only takes a very small percentage to swing the pricing, and in this case, we had a very high percentage. We're now back at about a 305 million hen level for the United States. To give you a Georgia perspective, we have about 10 million hens in Georgia, and on the broiler side, we produce more broilers than any other state in the nation, but on the hen side, we're about sixth largest. Iowa, to give you an idea, Iowa has about 60 million hens normally. So there are four factors that have impacted egg pricing, and it really all boils down to supply and demand, but some of these factors have really kind of magnified the supply and demand impact on eggs themselves. I mentioned the 45 million hens out of 330 million national flock. That is, we're replacing those hens, but it causes kind of a cascade of supply chain problems when you lose that much production in a short period of time. The other is just inflation. Most food products have seen anywhere from 15, in some cases 20% inflationary impacts over the last year. So eggs are no different in that. So the things that are challenging, regardless of what you produce, whether it's food or widgets, labor cost, energy cost, input cost are all increased, and so that's no different for eggs. Feed cost is one of our inputs, and it's basically corn and soybeans, and we're really pretty much at historical highs. So that's the on grain and soybeans, corn and soybeans, and so that's our number one cost when it comes to the farm side of producing chickens. The other factor that's really significant is a number of states in the United States have basically outlawed any type of egg production unless it's cage-free. There's 10 states that have done that so far, California being the largest one. And so what happens there is if you're a larger producer of eggs and you're trying to sell to the national market, you really have to produce at that California standard, basically. And so 30% of eggs produced in the United States now are cage-free. And just to give you an idea of how much more that costs to produce, if you're building new housing for cage-free, it's about $50 per hen to build the new housing. It's estimated that money that's already been spent and will need to be spent to meet the grocery store and restaurant commitments they've made. They've made commitments that by 2025 or other years that will be 100% cage free. It's going to take about $15 billion to produce that, create that kind of infrastructure to produce those chickens. In Georgia, that number is about $500 million. So the overall national cost of producing eggs is higher because of the cage-free mandates that are coming from some other states. I'll just close with saying there's better news on the horizon. When my friends and family would text me about $6 eggs, I would remind them that even at $6, you got a quality serving of protein for $1. And most of these folks that were texting me don't mind going out and buying a $5 cup of coffee at Starbucks. And they also didn't check in with me when we had $1.50 eggs in the grocery stores too. So wholesale prices are coming down. They're down 30 to 50% from 2022 highs. So I think the future you'll see a little bit lower prices, but I don't think they're going to get back down to those $1.50 dozen. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll close with that. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you coming and updating our committee. And I see one question or statement from Representative Donahoe, who hails from Gainesville, the poultry capital of Georgia.
Of the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mike, thank you as always. There's something that I guess the last 2 weeks, probably 10 or 12 people have come and asked, why are chickens laying less? And with that, they say something they're putting in the feed to make that happen. I'm like, I doubt that happened. So our chickens were laying less, and I went out with an empty bucket of KFC. And we had a talk, and the next day they increased 18 eggs. So I think that's the plan I'll use. But that's something that it's funny how a rumor starts. And it was like 10 people in 3 days started talking about this nonstop. But I appreciate what you do, and Gainesville is the poultry capital of the world, and we love having it that way.
Thank you, Mr.
Mike, got one more question from Representative Scoggins. Right
Thank you,
here on the
Mr.
front.
Chair. So it really wasn't what President Biden said, that Purina feed was not as good as it used to be, and that's why we're not laying more eggs.
I don't believe feed's got anything to do with it.
He did say that, and
one thing that's happened is a lot of people have backyard flocks now, and
I have a coop myself.
And laying hens go through periods of not laying as much. And the other thing that can have an impact is extreme cold weather.
Right.
And we had historically cold weather, so I think there are a lot of different factors.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Next on our agenda, Chairman Beth Camp, are you ready to present HB 33? I think we have a sub in your packet that should be presented this bill at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, and came back with sub. We also have a fiscal note on it in your packet. So, Chairman Camp, thank you for bringing this bill, and the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate you hearing this bill again. This bill moves veterinary licensure from the Secretary of State's office under the umbrella of the Department of Agriculture. And I want to thank Chairman Dickey and Chairman Corbett for assisting me on this, because doing this involves several different steps, which is one reason why we're hearing it again. When we heard the bill last time, we did not have a fiscal note. Now we do. And the fiscal note helps us understand how much it's going to cost in relation to appropriations and what it means to the Department of Agriculture and to our state budget. So bearing that in mind, we've had extensive conversations with the Department of Agriculture. We've had conversations with the subcommittee chair of appropriations regarding these fees and what it's going to take to do this. We've had lots of conversations with our friends at Farm Bureau. So we want to make sure that everyone has a voice in this and that everyone is clear on how this is going to work out. One of the changes on the sub, if let's see, line 23 and 24, this was an oversight that we corrected in the sub, where it gives the Commissioner of Agriculture the ability to approve, along with Senate confirmation, members of the Board of Veterinary Licensure. And then again, a little bit further down. Let's see.
Chairman Kent, we're going off LC 5103336S. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thank
Okay.
you. I'm sorry I didn't mention
All right,
that to
I want to
begin
make
with.
sure everybody had that.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think the biggest thing that's happened is we've had just very minute changes to the actual form. It does specify now that the executive director, which is spoken of extensively in this bill, will be an employee of the Department of Agriculture. So we are going to have to hire some people. You can look at the fiscal note. There's not only the executive director, but there's also people who handle the licensing. There's contracting for attorneys through the Department of Agriculture as well. So that's why the fiscal note is what it is at this point. But the bill really has not changed a whole lot. I'm hoping that Rules Committee will be more favorable now that we do have the fiscal note and we can explain some of the details with it. And I'm open for any questions.
Thank you. You do have a question, but I want to make sure the committee understands the fiscal note. It would be housed at the Department of Ag, but the cost will be borne by the veterinarian licensing fees
That
for
is
personnel at the Department of Agriculture implementing the licensing process for our vets. I want to make sure they're clear on that.
Yes, sir, they are. And I've had conversations this morning with the Veterinary Licensing Board. They're aware their fees are going to go up nominally to help cover and offset some of the costs that the fiscal note revealed. We certainly don't want to put an undue burden on the Department of Agriculture or the state of Georgia for this move. And by doing so, this will offset those fees.
Thank you. We've got a question. Who's 29? Chairman Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that was my question, the 5,500 licenses, how much money would they, in fees, do they pay every year?
Well, right now, they're paying $200 biannually, so approximately $100 a year. The vet techs pay slightly less than the veterinarians. Vet techs are also licensed under the same board. So it's going to work out. It's 5,500 licenses, and they're paying about $420,000 annually is what the fees are going to be. The discussion is to increase the fees by about 50%. So they'll go from approximately 200 for veterinarians to 300. And by doing this, this would be enough actually to offset the cost. So it should be not an undue burden to the state.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments about the bill from the committee? If not, I would entertain a motion for this bill. Got a motion from Representative Scott to pass. Got a second. Any other discussion or questions? We'll vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. No opposition. Motion passes. Thank you. On to rules.
Thank you, sir.
Next on our agenda, HB 187, Representative Leverett, for-profit credit repair. Are you ready at this time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is bringing back House Bill 187, and I appreciate the chair agreeing to bring this back for what I would hope would be a vote. As you may remember, this is the bill that would make it legal to offer credit repair services within the state of Georgia, provided that certain protections are followed. The original bill included a number of consumer protections in it. We had a substitute at the last hearing that added about another page and a half, and we've added just a few more at the end of the bill in lines 111 and through 114. That's on the last page, page 5. You cannot counsel or advise any buyer to make inauthentic or unfounded claims of identity theft, or counsel or advise any buyer to change his or her mailing address or address of domicile with any address affiliated with such credit repair organization. Those two changes were actually requested by other members of the lending industry and intended, I think, to address some of the concerns Chairman Perkle mentioned at the last meeting. We're still in discussions with them about potential other changes, but we'd like to try to move the bill if we can today. We also upped the bond, if you look back on page 3 of the substitute, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, that is LC 491343S. 1343S is the sub. If you look at the top of page 3, we've upped the bond to $100,000, required it to be posted with the Attorney General, and that would be for fines or civil damages that could be awarded in any case or administrative proceeding. So we've tried to add a number of other consumer protections to address concerns some have about the industry. I would just say, if you recall from my testimony, there I think is an issue with the accuracy of credit reports in Georgia, and we tend to be, I think, worse than some other states in the union. This is legal in every other state in the union. It's regulated by the federal government already. And so we believe it's time for us to allow a market-based solution that will allow people to get their credit reports straightened out. And we believe it's permitted under federal law. It's permitted in the laws of every other state. It ought to be permitted here too, as long as it's subject to some limitation and restriction, which we've got about 3 or 4 pages worth, I think, of restrictions here in this proposed bill. And I know some my friends at Georgia Watch are here. They still do oppose the bill in this form, but I believe a lot of their concern is driven by the lawsuit, which we've talked about. And without drilling too deep into those details, I just don't feel we ought to be making policy for the entire state with respect to an entire industry based on allegations that are as yet unproven against one actor in that industry. I also think if you look at the allegations, the construction that the CFPB is making on these federal regulations has not been embraced by the FTC historically. They're trying to stretch those regs into something that hadn't been done traditionally. And we don't think the lawsuit has merit anyway, and it's still being litigated. But I don't think we should conclude that the allegations are necessarily fact, because they haven't been proven yet. So I would ask your favorable consideration of the bill, and am available to answer any questions and to respond to any other testimony that may be presented.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know you've worked hard on this bill to make some changes and additions, and I appreciate it. Been in conversation with me, and I think several others on our committee, and we'll open it up for some questions. We are going to take a short testimony, I think, from a couple of people signed up in opposition, but I'm going to ask them to be very focused on the specifics of the bill, and then we'll come back to you if you want to.
Right, thank you.
But you can stay there or move or whatever you want. Let's stay right there, and I'm going question from number 26. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill. Just a simple question. Can you just share with us why the word services was deleted from the substitute?
To make the definitions in state law consistent with the terms that are used in federal law.
Thank you.
Representative Carter?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Go ahead.
Quick question. Now that we are opening up credit repair for for-profit companies are proposing to do this in the state of Georgia. Proposing. We've talked about the one company. We're not going to dwell on that one. But do you have any idea the scale or how many potential for-profit credit repair companies are we opening up to?
I don't know exactly the breadth of the industry. That's something we can try to get for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I see no more questions. I am going to allow Andy Lord and Liz Cole, I see sitting right on front row, to make some comments from Georgia Watch, or you can identify, and we'll keep it kind of brief to the point of the bill. Thank you.
Is this? I'm Andy Lord. I represent Georgia Watch. With me is Liz Coyle, our executive director. And Mr. Chairman, we will be brief, and we want to start again by thanking Chairman Leverett for bringing this. I feel like we've had good communication and an open door. We have tried to work through one of the major issues we have, but have not gotten comfortable with this from a consumer protection standpoint. We testified last time as to why Georgia Watch had issues with this, so I don't want to rehash that. What I do want to point to very quickly, and it was cited in Chair Leverett's commentary here. So a couple of things I want to point out. This is not just Georgia Watch opposed. The lawsuit that was referenced is from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It was filed under the Trump administration, not the Biden administration. I want to quickly reference that this lawsuit, one other point I want to make before I even say this is it was indicated that, there was one company that was subject to this lawsuit. That is correct. That company was Progrexian. The company that is bringing this bill to Georgia is Progrexian. The very company bringing this bill is currently under a lawsuit. That lawsuit from the CFPB says the Bureau brings this action against the defendants, Progrexian, alleging deceptive acts, abusive telemarketing acts. These are all cited in the lawsuit. It says that they used deceptive bait advertising to generate referrals, committed to guarantees it could not meet, and in reality did not provide any of the loans they claimed at all. This lawsuit is online. It's an active lawsuit. I encourage you all to read it. We also mentioned a minute ago in testimony the Federal Trade Commission. I want to read from you from the FTC's website. This is as of this morning, real quickly, Mr. Chairman. It says, credit repair scams, that's the term they use, credit repair scams, also frequently target financially distressed consumers who are having credit problems. The operations lure customers to purchase their services by falsely claiming they will remove negative information from the consumer's credit reports. Even if that information is accurate, the FTC has brought scores of law enforcement actions against these credit services, and the agency has partnered with states to bring hundreds of additional lawsuits. I don't think we want to saddle our Attorney General with dealing with that. Two other quick points, Mr. Chairman. This is from the National Consumer Law Center. They say, quote, there is an epidemic of disreputable credit repair organizations that charge exorbitant fees for promises they cannot keep. There's a whole report on that here that we don't have time to go into. And lastly, I want to point to something I found just on the Experian website this morning. It says, quote, there is nothing a credit repair service can legally do for you that you cannot do for yourself. And it goes on to say that in many cases, credit repairs cross the line into unethical and illegal measures. So what I would like to just say, Mr. Chairman, in closing, is it's not just Georgia Watch opposed. There is an active lawsuit alleging very serious charges against the very company that is bringing this legislation to Georgia. We would like to ask the committee to please not reward this behavior by bringing them into Georgia, at least until the lawsuit is resolved. There is no urgency for this bill. There are no consumers crying out for this for-profit service. It is available free. The credit agencies themselves have places on their website that you can very easily go to. I encourage you all to do that, to file a dispute. There's not a need for this service if we are able to wait for the resolution of this lawsuit. Otherwise, we may invite this company into Georgia and learn 6 months from now that they are found guilty of all these charges. We believe there's no urgency. We believe that this entity should not be rewarded for the type of behavior that I just cited. And we urge the committee to vote no on this measure today so that we can carefully study this in a study committee in the aftermath of the resolution of the lawsuit.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Ms. Cole, you want to add anything? That's pretty
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as usual, Andy was very thorough in his brief remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have. I want to also underscore that, and we've shared with Chairman Leverett, and we do truly appreciate his effort to protect Georgia consumers. We share that goal. The National Consumer Law Center has encountered problems with these types of credit repair organizations in other states, and so they've put together a set of recommendations that if a state were to consider allowing this practice, to put some significant guardrails. I've reviewed the current sub of the bill. I don't think it's there yet in terms of having enough safeguards. One of the things that the National Consumer Law Center strongly recommends is having a robust regulatory environment with someone within the AG's office, an individual, and would really require a fairly significant fiscal note, we believe, to have the kind of protections that would make us more comfortable with this bill.
Okay, thank y'all for being here. I see no questions. I'm going to turn it back to Chairman Leverett. Any parting comments before I ask for some motions here shortly?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just briefly. I'm not going to read the answer, but again, the allegations, and I appreciate Georgia Watch's concern. They're trying to protect Georgia consumers. I really am too. I think these businesses can help Georgia consumers work on their credit. True, it is something you can do on your own, but just like many services, you don't have the time or the resources to do it, and these companies know how to do it and can do it well. The allegations in the complaint don't so much involve Progrection as they do others that were selling their services on their behalf. And I won't belabor that point. I just think we're taking allegations and treating them as true and substantiated when that's not happened yet. And I would also say I'm at this point I'm trying to avoid in creating a lot of great expense and a new regulatory bureaucracy for the industry until we know that it's needed. The way this bill is structured, if you don't comply with all the requirements in it, and we've even got some requirements to address some of the concerns that Georgia Watch expressed, you can't guarantee that a score or credit report will be improved through their contracting with you. You can't do that. If you do that, you're committing a misdemeanor, which is up to $1,000 a year in jail. I would submit that's a more robust regulatory structure than about any other industry in the financial services industry in this state has. So I just believe this is a market-based solution that can provide help. I'm not saying they're all angels. We'll need to deal with that on a case-by-case basis, and we're providing a bond that provides a local source of funds to provide redress if there is some abuse. And I would just encourage your do pass recommendation on this bill.
Thank you for your work on it. Thank you for presentation. You got a couple questions, Representative Carter?
Thank you. Again, I really appreciate it, what you're attempting to do. And it has been at my experience that Georgians have already suffered at the hand of scrupulous organizations that do credit repair. And I understand you're trying to protect us. And I think you may have asked my question because I'm reading through this and I'm trying to understand, okay, so if this is violated, and I guess what you just said, if someone's found guilty, an agency that's found guilty, or an individual working for the agency found guilty, you said that they have $1,000 fine and a year in jail. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's made a misdemeanor to violate the statute. Now, that may not be a lot to a big company, but that's a lot to an individual who's going to have to sit in the pokey.
Okay.
Thank you. I see no questions. We've debated this bill on today and prior meeting, and thank you for your work on it. I think I'll be open to a motion if it's the will of the committee. Representative Hagan.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
Have a motion. Do I hear a second? A second. Any other questions or comments? Hear none. All in favor say say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Have one. Okay. We have a couple opposed. The chair declares the motion passes. So thank you for that. Chairman Leverett will go on the rules. I'm going to turn this mic over to my vice chair. I'm going to present HB 305. It's going to be a hearing only. We're not going to vote it this I'll comment here in just a minute. I'm gonna go down to the table, Mike, Joe.
Thank you, Chairman Dickey. We appreciate you bringing this.
Well, thank you. I bring HB 305 this morning. It's a bill that's actually been discussed, been in the works for several years. Chairman Houston is probably the bigger instigator of it. Some appropriations go through her committee for our farmers markets and for Department of Ag. And I think many of us, including her and on this committee, have been aware of the declining conditions of our farmers markets throughout our state. I know we have many of them, some in your districts, certainly one in Macon near my district, and for various reasons, their viability has been declining. It's just the nature of agriculture and farming nowadays. Many of these were built and envisioned in the 50s, 60s, and that's no longer really how farmers like me market their fruit anymore, that take it and sit at a market. But the Department of Ag is these markets have been under their supervision and direction forever, and have done as good a job, I think, as they could do. This bill is no way a reflection on where we've been, where we're going, but it's a bill about the future of these facilities, especially the importance of Atlanta Farmers Market, what we call the produce terminal, where a lot of fruits, vegetables, produce are distributed really throughout Georgia and the southeast. Really, I've noticed the need for more investment in these facilities where needed. Some of the locations we have, I think, don't justify additional investment, but my personal feeling is that Atlanta Produce Terminal does. The facilities are, as I said, aged from the 60s where they were built and just need a fresh voice. And so with that, Chairman Houston and myself and Senator Walker, Commissioner Tyler Harper has been very engaged in the last year or two in trying to figure out what direction we go. And we set up a study committee last year, and this bill is really the recommendation of that study committee. And you can see the other signers on this bill, Representative Houston, Gilliard, and Carpenter, were House members that on that study committee. Excuse me. And so the recommendation, we hired a consulting firm, and their recommendation back was to do a market authority, as very similar to what we're doing with other authorities, Jekyll Island Authority, Stone Mountain Authority, World Congress Center Authority. All our authorities in our state work very, very well. I'm very familiar with the authority running the Agri Center in Perry. Excellent facility, captures the revenue, and that's really been the problem with the Department of Ag, is they have not been capturing and internally holding and reinvesting the rents and the income from these facilities. We have budgeted maintenance through the general budget, but all the income, rents, and leases all go back into the Treasury. So it was just not set up to run as a business that you and I know. And so this bill I can go through, but it's fairly long. It is really, Dave Barry drafted this, and I think it's pretty boilerplate what our other authorities or how they are set up. It starts with a board, and that's one place. I've been in conversation with Commissioner Harper. He and I and some others a meeting, hopefully today or tomorrow, to try to make some tweaks to this legislation. But the general gist of it is to set up a board, an authority to run these facilities and run it like a business. If they see fit that some other better and higher use for some of our facilities with other state agencies or other can dispose of those, and hopefully look at Atlanta and make some updates and investments and keep that facility strong. But to run it like a business, capture the rents, and that's really what this bill does. It's nothing new or different about this bill, and really don't envision this authority being any different than our other authorities in how it's set up and run. So again, I think you'll see a sub coming back from me shortly, early next week, to try to get this bill over to the Senate, and they have certainly been in conversation, and Chairman Goodman over there, and last year Chairman Walker put a lot of time and study visits to our farmers markets last year, and I think going forward we feel like an authority is the best way the state can handle it. I hope Chairman Harper is. We want the Department of Ag involved with input not only to this bill but into the authority as well. We're the property would be in the name of the authority, but certainly all the property now is in the Department of Ag. So it will be a awkward process trying to transfer, but I think we can do it and do it very efficiently and long term make these markets wherever they are strong and vibrant. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or specifics of the bill, but it's as I said, pretty boilerplate authority how it would be set up.
Chairman, we have a couple of questions.
Okay, be happy to answer.
23, where's?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For full disclosure, I do some farmers markets. My wife and I do on Saturday morning. Snellville Farmers Market, Lilburn Farmers Market, and I'm very familiar with this activity. When this bill came up last week, I talked to the organizers of those farmers markets, and they were not aware that this was happening. My question to you is, have you contacted, and I know that you and the commissioner have worked on this, have you contacted some of the folks in the boots on ground folks of those markets? Have you contacted some organizers? I do understand that some of them are city owned. The city are the ones that are in charge of this thing. The other question I had is when you say,
let me answer that right quick, and I appreciate it. And you're right. Many of our communities, cities, are doing smaller daily farmers markets, which is working very, very well. I even envision, I don't know where our voice is, so I envision it would be a great opportunity for this authority or another piece of legislation to really offer some investment for our local communities to enhance and enlarge or operate our smaller hands-on farmers markets that are not state-owned now. I think back in the 40s, 50s, everybody envisioned these larger community farmers markets, which are now just not needed at all. But I know our cities have really seen the need for our smaller community organized type farmers markets to go. I know my business visits several of them all over Metro Atlanta, taking peaches on a weekly, daily basis to those. There's some open on Saturdays, some on Wednesdays, and that type of thing. Those are working very, very well and are very efficient. But our larger ones, such as in maybe Macon or Savannah, those Augusta, those are just really just not what's needed and used now. So,
Mr. Chairman, this is more targeting the larger type farmers market. Is that what you're saying? The state ones?
yeah,
State owned. Got it.
So-
This state owned?
yeah.
Okay. And my last question will be, what does it mean when he says exercise of police powers? What does that mean?
Exercise what power?
On line number 5, exercise of police powers. What do you mean by that?
Most authorities hire their own security force and do not depend on city police or county. They certainly assist, but with the facilities being as big as some of them are, such as the Atlanta Farmers Market, would need its own internal security force to monitor traffic and who comes and goes. I know World Congress Center does. I know Perry Agri Center does during the fair, and just want to make sure visitors and customers are safe. So they would have that power, as well as power to borrow money, float bonds. This bill allows them to do bonds, and so a vast amount of ability to do. Any other
Sure.
questions?
Got a few more if you want to.
Sure.
Okay, number 27.
Yeah, can you give me an idea how many facilities we're talking about here? Because I am familiar with a lot of little community markets, but as far as the state markets,
That's a great question, and I don't have exactly the answer. We've got them in Macon, Augusta, of course, in Atlanta. We've got them in Cordele, Valdosta, huh? No. Moultrie, Thomasville. I think that's all. Cairo. So they're fairly small.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine has to do with making sure the representation is in Southwest Georgia, where we still have active ones. I will tell you, there was a stir a couple years ago when they talked about shutting down the one in Thomasville. It is functioning, it's profitable. We have one in Cairo, and the community farmers, the small farmers, still use that market. So I just want to make sure when appointments are made that they don't overlook South Georgia representation.
Well,
Thank you.
I appreciate that, Chairman Taylor, and I know our communities where these markets are viable or working well and being used. I'm sure whether the Commissioner Harper or either authority will look really, really hard at those and make sure that we continue those. The assets are there, the property's there, and whether we need to invest more capital to enlarge them or make them viable, I hope it does. We've certainly won in Savannah at Garden City. I think it's been some discussion about another use for that particular piece of property, and so that's the kind of thing I think we have to look as a business front at these facilities that I think in the past have maybe not had that critical eye and critical economic look at. So hopefully that would be the direction of the authority members and the management of these facilities.
Looks like we have one more.
I'll take one more.
Number 11.
Over here, Mr. Chairman. So just want to make sure I understand, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me. This bill is the product of a study committee that considered input from all sources and came up and even had a consultant advising them as to best ways to improve the state farmers markets around the state. Not every farmers market, but just the ones that are owned by the state, managed by the state.
Correct. Great point to Representative Ramirez. Just the state-owned Department of Agriculture controlled markets all this would be. This bill would put the authority over.
And what this does is it creates an entity that would assumably take title, control them, manage them, keep them secure, keep them well managed, also retain the income that's generated and leverage that I'm assuming, for any improvements or development that would be needed to bring those into the 21st century and be a viable partner with our state's farmers. So it's, to your point, so it sort of serves the need better of helping market Georgia products.
Well said, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your help with that. Great explanation, and I cannot add any more to that. So with that, thank you very much. Look forward to a sub for this at our next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Vice Chair. Appreciate that. We also, on our agenda, Chairman Perkle, HB 452. Are you ready to speak to that? Thank you for bringing that.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know time's of the essence. I'll be fairly quick. I could probably use Chairman Leverett with that succinct response he did in helping the chair out with his bill. I've got a little bill in judiciary that his succinctness and great knowledge would be of benefit to me. House Bill 452. Thank you for considering it, and this will be a hearing only. 40 million acres in the United States, 40 million acres of ag land are held by foreign persons and entities. That has been growing by 2.2 million acres per year every year since 2015. It's growing a lot, which is not, not by itself disconcerting, although ag lands are something that the Lord put here and is not adding to at this time. In the state of Georgia, we've got over 1 million acres of ag land that is currently foreign held. This bill is fairly, I shouldn't say simple because we all say that, but the meat of the bill really is beginning on lines 32. It provides that no non-resident alien or entity of a foreign government designated as a foreign adversary by the United States Secretary of Commerce shall acquire directly or indirectly any possessory interest in agriculture lands or land within a 25-mile radius of a military base. It speaks to, and I'll speak for just a second, to what is covered by a foreign adversary. So these are the United States Secretary of Commerce has a list that they update periodically of nations and entities that are hostile and adversaries of the United States. It does provide remedies when these lands are acquired indirectly, such as inheritance or in the collection of debts. So someone who is a non-resident alien of a hostile nation to the United States, as designated by the Secretary of Commerce, could inherit or receive it from a debt that is owed. And it provides the ability to dispossess that. So for the language in the bill provides for if it is accrued in the collection of a debt, it shall be disposed of within 3 years, and through an inheritance disposed of within 1 year. There's also a way for the non-resident alien of a foreign entity to also retain ownership if they become a resident alien. So this is not, this is for non-residents that are not here and entities that are not here of a foreign nation that is adversary to the United States. There is, well, shall I take questions now, Mr. Chairman, or do we need to move on as a hearing only? I know we're running out of time.
Whatever you feel comfortable about doing.
Yes, sir.
You do have a couple questions.
Okay.
Representative Campbell?
What about leasing land? Is this strictly owning, or how does leasing come?
Yes, this is owning. This is owning. Possessory interest.
Owning, okay.
Yeah.
Number 24, who is Chairman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Perkel, for this bill. I appreciate the definition that you have on 12 through 15, explaining exactly what agricultural land is in
Yes.
definition, because when I was glancing through the bill, that was one of my questions, zoning. So I appreciate that you are recognizing non-conforming zoning for that. Is there any, I guess, was there any particular reason that was mentioned, or is that just the definition that you and Legislative Council were able to derive?
So I need to brag on him publicly. I've done so privately. There are 14 other states that have enacted similar legislation. I've looked at them all. And our lead counsel, Dave Berry, did not use any of them as a guide. It took him 3 weeks and 20 drafts. But he's got the best language of any in the country of legislation like this. This is, he threaded the needle quite well, and I think it follows the legislative intent that I had. So,
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this measure.
Representative Jenkins?
Yeah, then thank you for bringing this bill. One thing I see is 25 miles looks awful close to me. Where did that number come from, and why is that the one we're using?
So 25 miles may appear close to you. That's pretty big. That's pretty big circle. I had some that said, "My Lord, Clay, that is a big area." So, I'm not going to please everyone with that, and this is based off of. So this is kind of similar to legislation in some other states. It seems to be where we landed.
All right.
Representative Lewis Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the case where a non-alien does acquire the land, line 41 mentions that shall be disposed of within 3 years.
The land will be disposed of.
Provided that the person does not become a citizen.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes citizenship takes well beyond.
So not a citizen. No, ma'am. It does not require them to become a citizen, but does require them to become a resident alien. So it's not part of the citizenship process.
Got it. Okay.
So we want to stay away from that.
Thank you for that clarification.
ma'am.
One other question. Can you give us an example of what disposed of, ways that someone can dispose the land?
So you no longer own it. So I own it, and now I no longer own it. You can give it away, you could sell it, but I pass title on the property to someone else.
And how is that going to be monitored?
How will it be monitored? This bill provides for the Commissioner of the Agriculture and the Secretary of State to monitor. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Representative Cox.
Thanks, Chairman, for this bill. Big supporter of the logic that's here. I heard the comment about leasing, and I know that this is about not leasing, but let's assume for a second that leasing's involved and someone does that. Are there any ways, or what are concerns that leasing would not be part of this subject as it relates to this, to add it into it?
I would have to confer with our lay counsel. Will that be okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, actually, possessory interest is a pretty technical legal term that does include leasing. It is any.
I was wrong. It does include leasing.
Possession of the land, which might have leasing involved, where you actually have a right to be on the land. That's what possession is. Not just ownership in fee simple or even just some sort of ownership, life estate. It would be any type of interest that allows you to take possession of the land for some period of time.
Thank you for that.
So can
Does that
we
answer your question?
Absolutely. So is there a way to add something into the language that is like such as leasing or what you just said, so that at least it clarifies that?
As I said, it's a technical term that already includes that is a term of art.
Thank you.
Chairman Pro got another question
Yes.
from Chairman Leverett.
Morning, Chairman Pergel. It would seem to me that you and Dave have drafted a pretty extensive definition. And so this, it requires it can be a natural person. It can also be a corporation or corporate entity. But if it's a natural person, if you're a legal permanent resident, none of this applies to you. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's
So
right.
if you're here legally, this doesn't apply at
Does
all.
not apply. That's correct.
It's only if you're a citizen of a foreign country that is deemed to be a foreign adversary by the U.S. State of Commerce, and you're not here. You're somewhere else.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to.
I will emphasize that it is Dave Berry that did the drafting of this. I mean, I'll take credit, but he did a great job.
I would concur with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our attorneys are very helpful sometimes.
You wasn't in judiciary with me yesterday.
Sometimes they can certainly. Well, thank you, Chairman Perkle, for this bill.
Thank you.
I hope we'll see it. We do have a couple other comments from it's Jake Matthews from Georgia Farm Bureau. Come to the podium, Mike, if you would.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Great to be with you all this morning. My name is Jake Matthews. I'm with Georgia Farm Bureau in our Public Policy Department. We're a grassroots farm organization that represents over 240,000 members statewide, farmers and producers of every single crop, commodity, livestock grown and raised in the state of Georgia. Georgia Farm Bureau is in support of this bill, and we really appreciate Chairman Perkle bringing it. We believe that it addresses a major concern of ours. It deals with making sure that our food supply here in the state is secure, and we think that some very careful consideration was put into how this was done. We believe that our members play a big role in that each and every day by growing the food and fiber that we rely on each and every day. So again, we are in support of the bill and appreciate the chairman for bringing it. Happy to take any questions, but thank you all.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate those comments. And also from Georgia Agribusiness Council, Jake Tench would also like to comment on this bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I will be brief. I know that time is short, but my name is Jake Tench. I'm with Georgia Agribusiness Council. We are a trade association that represents a vast array of members across this state, ranging anywhere from small family farms to ag retailers, ag manufacturers, and everything in between. I want to start off by saying thank you to Chairman Perkle for bringing this legislation and his commitment to making sure that the language is right and putting Georgia agriculture first. As he stated earlier, agricultural land is a limited resource. It is scarce, and prices are continuing to rise on the land that is available. And as we look more closely at where our food comes from, I think a lot of people have interest in that. We need to make sure that we are food secure and keep our number one industry to do that. This bill, we believe, is a step in the right direction to do that, and we look forward to working with Chairman Perkle as this process moves forward.
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chairman Perkle. Any other comments on 452?
Just thank you for hearing it. There will be just as an add-on because I mean this is where our food comes is a national security issue. It really is. I'm going to add on line 31 on the next draft, Mr. Chairman, just to give them an update of where they will see it next time. On line 31, there will be a capital C, and a separate class here will be a foreign government designated as a foreign adversary by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, just to make sure that we cover all our bases. So there will be one small add, but does not change the crux of the bill, just to clean up language. So,
Thank you. Chairman Perkle, I know it's after 9. I thank you for the patience of a committee. You have also another bill in our committee at this time, HB 458. Are you prepared to want to comment
Sure.
or hearing only on this bill
Absolutely.
as well?
Absolutely.
To get our committee up to speed, we do have some legislation that was just dropped this week, and this is one of them. Thank you for your work on this bill. So I think is 458 in your folders. Okay. So Chairman Perkle, speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will both walk on the wild side on this one and try to get this done fairly quickly. I would not, in a public matter, as you did earlier, refer to Chair Lady Penny Houston as an instigator. So we're both walking on thin ice on this one, and this is why. It is not a typo. Clay Perkle is, in fact, carrying the hemp bill. Many of you may recall in 2019, when my good friend, Chairman John Corbett, carried this bill, the inaugural hemp bill. I was one of 3 no votes on the bill. And yet I'm here with the hemp bill. So a good question will be, why? CBD and hemp-derived products are presently not adequately regulated in Georgia. A 10-year-old can legally purchase a 100 milligram THC gummy. There is no database nor record of how many stores in Georgia sell hemp products, where they are made, or what's actually in them. This legislation puts guardrails, much needed guardrails in place. It has the potential to help farmers, processors, and consumers in Georgia. It empowers the Department of Ag to enforce the standards which are contained in this bill. That's all I had to do was start talking about hemp. Folks run out the building. So let's walk through it quickly. Section 1. My Chairman McCall is leaving me. Section 1 states the legislative intent to use the revenue from hemp to cover the cost for the program. It's our legislative intent to do that. It does not mean that that is what will happen, but that is the intent. Section 2 creates the language and definitions for a full panel certificate of analysis by an independent and accredited laboratory, which is important. It must be independent. It must be accredited. Lines 44 and 45, if you'll turn there, specifically addresses that Delta-9 must not be more than the federally defined THC levels for hemp, 0.3%. The balance of Section 2 provides definitions, maximum tolerances of pesticides, heavy metals, residual solvents, microbiological impurities, and other contaminants that you could find in the product. The reason for this section, Section 2, is to ensure the strictest standards for these products for our consumers. All right, 3, 4, and 5 address licensing requirements. I'm going to cover this pretty quickly. Hemp growers will still pay $50 an acre, maximum license fee of $1,000. Most of these are in the 5 to 10 acre range, so it really wouldn't have much impact on that. Hemp processor permits will be $5,000 annually. Bond requirements at $50,000. Background checks will be streamlined for growers and processors. Fingerprint background check on the initial permits. An additional change in Section 3 and 4 brings Georgia in line with the federal hemp language, and so there's a little bit of change there to make sure that we have the same language that they do on the federal standards. That language also puts us in line with federal hemp language regarding misdemeanor offenses in the past, keeping the prohibition from obtaining a license by anyone who's been convicted of a felony in the last 10 years. So it does keep that in. Section 6 is completely new language. Retailers and wholesalers of hemp-derived products will be required to purchase a license issued by the Department of Ag. $250 annually for retail stores, $1,500 for wholesale stores. The reason for this is to create a registry. That is the only way that we could come up with to find a registry for the retailers who are selling these products. Section 7 is the meat. So this is the prelude to the meat in Section 7. This is the truth and labeling portion of the bill. All consumable hemp products sold and distributed in Georgia must have a QR code in the packaging that shows the passing results of a full panel certificate of analysis conducted within 12 months. The department also will perform random tests to ensure compliance with this section. It also limits the volume of THC that can be administered at 25 milligram a dose and 500 per package. That language gets rid of most of the unsafe and mislabeled products that are on the market. Section 8 and 9 allows the Department of Ag to create rules and regs, and Section 10, finally, provides language to prevent the purchase of consumable hemp products by anyone under the age of 21. So, that's the bill, Mr. Chair. It's 17 or 18 pages. I tried my best to hit all the highlights. If I missed any, I apologize, and I will attempt to answer questions that you may have or catch me offline. Because I know you were just given this, and I can't expect you to read through it that quickly, but if you would catch me offline, I'd love to talk to you about any concerns that you have.
Thank you, Chairman Perkle, and it sounds like a really good bill. I appreciate your work on it. It's been an ongoing discussion with me, and I know members of this committee for several years trying to perfect our hemp products as well as our hemp industry and processing. It's been complicated. It's been a moving target.
It's been a mess, Mr. Chairman.
I know you've really addressed a lot of my concerns, or really all of my concerns in that bill with the quality, and I think that's been my biggest, one of my biggest concerns is knowing what's in these products, and I think it's this bill would address those concerns and many others. So I think you've been very thorough in looking at some of the areas that we've been looking at for several years, and hopefully improving our hemp industry and products and retail, having a handle on that. So I do have a question from Representative Donahue.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me ask you, Chairman Perkle, this has been like a boomerang. We've been on this subject quite a bit. And I appreciate, I see where we've lowered certain standards from the price that to me was real high at $300,000 and then the 50 per acre.
I prefer not to say lowered the standards. I think we've raised the standards.
We've raised it, but we lowered the price for better competition.
Yes, sir.
But there was something we always talked about was if it got hot, become hot, meaning too much. And if they found a hot part of the hemp, they had to destroy it all.
Still do. Yes.
They still do.
Absolutely.
So as a farmer, isn't that pretty much risky to go ahead and say, I'm going to hopefully have nothing hot here, and they find something, you lost all your crop, all your money?
Representative Donahue, as a farmer, I got to tell you, every year I put seed in the dirt is a risk. Hurricane Michael taught me that even when I make a great crop, you ain't done yet till it's in the basket and on its way somewhere. So it is risky. And I will tell you that we have genetics for hemp that are designed to grow in our part of the world. So not those that are grown in Colorado that have problems with getting hot. We have varieties. Most of the farmers use clone seeds, all female seed that, and they monitor it close. And so they randomly select samples to make sure that they're not close to hot. And we're getting a pretty good idea with the heat units, where you're at in the cycle of production for the plant, how long you could go until it gets hot. Because when it gets hot, it is no longer hemp. It has to be destroyed. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was a long answer. I apologize for that.
We got a
Representative.
question from 27. Who?
So from what I've seen with hemp production, it's been a wonderful opportunity for very small operations to farm profitably. And unfortunately, we just got this, so I hadn't really been able to study it. But I'm always concerned when I see regulations. They seem to affect the small producer with the cost of compliance because of with their small volume. So that would be probably my biggest concern, just looking at this at a glance, is that these small producers who've had such an opportunity with this product could be regulated out of the business.
I have not. Well, thank you for the question, because it gives me an opportunity to expand. I've not had a single grower say that they were not in favor of this, because this actually, and they're begging, the ones I've talked to, small growers, that some of us had lunch with over at the rural, whatever, the rural caucus last week, I think, that some of the individuals there were small growers, and they are begging for this because this puts the guardrails in there that they can actually grow a business. It has the potential to be very profitable, but only if we put these regs in place. Without it, it is a wild, wild west. We have no idea right now where the product comes from or what's in it if you take it. And that is why it's so important to me, because the things that we put in our body, we ought to know what they are. So thank you for the question. But I've had nothing but positive feedback from our small growers.
Chairman Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would seem to me just, the chairman organized a sort of an informational trip to one of these facilities. I was very impressed.
To my district.
To your district, that's right. And it would seem to me what you're doing here is you're really ensuring quality of the product, and you're preventing unfair competition amongst people who would not be selling as wholesome a product, so to speak.
I see no more questions. Thank you for your work on this. We'll, at our next meeting, hopefully, if anybody has any questions or concerns, see Chairman Perkle. In the meantime, I know this has been a lot of work and first time we've noticed it. Is there any other business come for the committee? As I said before, be on the lookout for an additional meeting early next week. If we can try to, these additional bills are coming and need to get through rules before crossover, so time is getting short. Thank you for your patience